everybody at the center, the talk is not streaming on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because you have not started.
It's starting now.
Okay, but tell me.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, very good. We're here. And we'll start with a song, no?
Yes, Swami.
All right.
Very, very good.
And which song are we doing? Acham Dalam? This is a song composed by Swami Vivekananda
I hear that every morning. But
for his guru, Sri Ramakrishna. Achandala pratihantarayo yasya prema pravaho lokatito vyahanaja lokakalyanamarga त्रैलोक्येऽप्य प्रतिममहिमा जानकी प्राणबन्धो त्रैलोक्येऽप्य प्रतिममहिमा जानकी प्राणबन्धो भक्त्या ज्ञानं वृतवरवपो सीतया योगी राम भक्त्या ज्ञानं वृतवरवपो सीतया योगी राम स्तब्धीकृत्य प्रलयकलितं बाहवोत्थं महान्तं विद्वारत्रि प्रकृतिसहज अन्धतामिस्रमिश्र गीतं शान्तं मधुरमपि यः सिंहनादं जगर्ज गीतं शान्तं मधुरमपि यः सिंहनादं जगर्ज सोऽयञ्जातः प्रतितपुरुषो रामकृष्णस्त्विदानी सोऽयञ्जातः प्रतितपुरुषो रामकृष्णस्त्विदानी नरदेव देव जय जय नरदेव नरदेव देव जय जय नरदेव नरदेव देव जय जय नरदेव शक्ति समुद्र समोततरङ्गं दर्शित प्रेम विजृम्भितरङ्गं शक्ति समुद्र समोततरङ्गं दर्शित प्रेम विजृम्भितरङ्गं संशय राक्षसनाशमस्त्रं संशय राक्षसनाशमस्त्रं यामि गुरुं शरणं भव वैद्यं यामि गुरुं शरणं
Thank you, Swami.
Ah. Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
Oh, you we just saw you on the.
Yeah.
Ah.
This lady has got this.
Oh, good. Here we are. All right. Good morning. Oh, Neolina has come. You could have, if you had been on time, you could have sung. I was going to ask you, but then it came to me today. All right. So today, I thought we can have a nice informal talk about. Actually, the topic I chose is Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna. Because actually to talk about Holy Mother is to talk about Ramakrishna. Her whole life is fully centered in Ramakrishna, and her whole life revolves around Ramakrishna, so you can't talk about Holy Mother without also talking about Ramakrishna. And in a sense, though we don't see it from say, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, but to talk of Ramakrishna is also to talk of Holy Mother, because really Sri Ramakrishna himself revealed, she is my Shakti, she is the power, she has come as, they came together, they came really as two facets of one incarnation. So, and yet to talk about Holy Mother is very difficult. And you're going to hear the same stories that I told this morning. We met earlier on Zoom with the children's Vedanta, what do you call it? The
Vedanta Kids Program.
there's a special name you have for it, no?
Pupils of Vedanta.
Pupils of Practical Vedanta or
Yeah.
something? Yeah. So I met with the pupils of Practical Vedanta this morning, and I told some stories that we're going to tell again. So, so she's, because why is it difficult to talk about Mother? On the one hand, she's so simple. She's a village woman, and she's very motherly and affectionate, and we feel like she's so simple. And yet, behind that veil of simplicity, she's utterly profound. And so, but how do you touch that profundity when what you see on the surface is all just a simple village woman looking after all the devotees like their own mother? Swami Gambhirananda points out in his biography, and I'm thankful to Swami Satyamananda for pointing this out last week on Sunday. He mentions there's these three aspects of Holy Mother that are kind of intertwined, and those are the mother, Bhakta Janani, the mother of the devotees, then the Jnana Dayini, the guru, the giver of knowledge, and Devi, the goddess. These three aspects of mother we see, and when we first see her as the mother of the devotees, and people would come to her and feel like they've come to their own mother. Oftentimes people would say, "Oh, she reminds me of my own mother. Looking at her, her face reminds me of the face of my own mother." And tasting her love, particularly at Jairambati, where she was in her element, that everybody felt like this is my own mother, and she was called Ma. Everyone would call her Ma. No fancy formal names, just Ma. Our own mother. And yet, mixed with that was her spiritual ministration, we can say, how she guided the order of monks, how she initiated hundreds of devotees into spiritual life and guided their spiritual life and granted them spiritual knowledge, granted them direct spiritual experience many times. And then this transcendental aspect, which which she kept so carefully concealed. Not like Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna was going constantly into samadhi. And we see that in the Gospel, almost every page of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, again Sri Ramakrishna has entered samadhi. Holy Mother, we don't see that. She doesn't seem to be entering into samadhi. Swami Sridharanji, you probably know the story, he asked Swami Shantananda about, did you ever see Holy Mother enter into samadhi? And he got angry. He said, what? What nonsense? Holy Mother is the giver of samadhi. It's not that she's entering samadhi, she's the granter of samadhi. So Swami Shantananda had that, one of his disciples had that understanding of her, that beyond just someone who goes into samadhi, she's actually the granter of samadhi, this Devi, this transcendental aspect. She was born in 1853, more than 17 years after Sri Ramakrishna was born, 1836, and less than 10 years before Swami Vivekananda was born. Because it was December 22nd, 1853. Swamiji was born on January 12th, 1863. So just less than 10 years before Swamiji. She's closer in age to Swami Vivekananda than to Sri Ramakrishna, interestingly. And Jairambati, in those days, was an extremely remote village hamlet. And sometimes I think it's valuable to think back to that time and how simple life was. In some ways it was very difficult as far as getting medical care or communicating or travel was extremely difficult, but life was so much simpler than it is today. We didn't have, they didn't have computers in their pockets distracting them at every moment. There was no electricity. Just think of that. We're so used to electricity. No electricity. So no lights. You can't come into a room and flip on a light. When it's dark, or you have a kerosene lamp, or a little ghee lamp. And no air conditioning. No fans except the ones that you use with your own hand. And transportation. There was the good old bullock cart, which is a very bumpy ride over the mud roads. Or there's the palanquin, where 4 strong men are engaged to carry you in a little thing, and you bounce around along that thing. Or there's the good old feet. That was the primary method of travel. Your own feet. Just walk there. So the only modern convenience that was there was the mail. The mail was extremely effective. The British had instituted that, and you could send a letter anywhere in India and it would reach in a few days. So that is a remarkable thing that they did have this kind of communication. So that kind of peaceful life tied to the seasons. When it gets light, you get up. When it gets dark, you get ready to go to bed. Work, agrarian culture. And like Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother's parents also had intimations of an unusual child to come. She was the first of 7. Her mother was returning to Jairambati from a trip to Shihor, and she was resting under a tree. Actually, she had gone to answer a call of nature, and she heard felt someone coming down the tree, a young girl coming down the tree and clasping her arms around her neck, and Mother fell unconscious. Shyamsundari Devi fell unconscious and felt afterwards that girl had entered into her. So this is one of those things. Her father also had a vivid dream of a divine girl embracing him and telling him, "I have come to your family." So this is how the great souls come with we find in all the traditions, the great world teachers, they intimate their arrival to the parents. and they carefully select their parents, not for wealth, not necessarily for wealth or learning or anything else, but for deep devotion to God, for purity, for that kind of purity which is where they will enter a very safe, nurturing environment with deep spiritual traditions being maintained. Sri Ramakrishna, as we know, was married to her when he was 23 and she was 5 and a half. This seems extremely shocking today, and of course this practice has been put to an end. But in those days it was just a betrothal. It was like his younger sister, almost like his daughter, and gradually she grew up. And we know there also, I told this morning how his brother and mother couldn't find a wife. They couldn't find anyone suitable to be married. Sri Ramakrishna was at that point probably quite notorious in those areas for being a madman, for being a religious nut. So to find a husband, find a wife for him turned out to be extremely difficult. And also there were demands for reverse dowry. The dowry system is generally that the wife's family has to pay the husband's family. But interestingly, at this time in Dharambati, I don't know why, I haven't been able to find out much about that, but for whatever reason, it was a reverse dowry. And Sri Ramakrishna's family had to pay the family of the bride. And even the dowries being demanded were too high, the poor family couldn't afford it, for whatever reason. So finally Sri Ramakrishna came to know, and you would think, being so drawn to renunciation, that he would say, what? Marriage? Forget it, I'm not getting married. No. He said, what are you doing looking here and there? You'll find the bride marked with a straw in the house of the Mukherjees in Dharambati. So they went to the house of the Mukherjees, and sure enough, they were able to arrange the marriage. So, that bond was forged at the age of 5 and a half. And the Holy Mother's early memories of Sri Ramakrishna are of just love, of his extreme care for her, and how he taught her. He taught her not only spiritual things, but also things of daily life, like how to trim a kerosene lantern. These kind of things that people in those days, you had to know. Now all we do is, now we have to learn how to change a light bulb. And don't think that's a small thing. There are people who don't know how to change a light bulb. There are people who've grown up with servants in their house their whole life, and if the light goes out, you call the servant to change it, and they don't know how to change a light bulb. So we learned to change a light bulb in those days. We learned to trim the lamp. Sri Ramakrishna himself taught young Saranamani how to do these kind of daily household chores. So it's wonderful. Now, she once visited Kamarpukur when she was 13, and before Sri Ramakrishna was there, just to visit her in-laws, because she's considered now a daughter of the family, and she was frightened to walk alone to the tank for her bath. And she relates how, when it was time for her to go, a group of young women, a group of maidens, beautiful young maidens appeared, surrounded her and walked with her to the pond for her bath. So she didn't feel shy or embarrassed or exposed. She was surrounded by these 8 young women. Who were they? We really don't know. It seems that they may be not of this world. They may have been some kind of angels or devis or something. But this was Holy Mother's experience. Did she imagine them? Did anybody else see them? We don't know the answer to these questions. But clearly, she had some kind of divine protection. It is interesting that even at that time, Sri Ramakrishna knew that his wife is not just an ordinary, is not someone like us. She is a special person. She is his helpmate, as it were. Sri Ramakrishna would be talking with the villagers, the village women especially, for long hours, giving them spiritual instructions. And young Sarada would be there and she'd fall asleep. And the other women would want to wake her up so that she shouldn't miss all these teachings. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, no, no, let her sleep, don't wake her up. If she hears everything I have to say, she won't stay here. She won't stay on this earth. She'll unfold her wings and she'll fly away. So he actually wanted her not to get too much spiritual teachings all at once. And of course, the Holy Mother would say of those days, I felt as if there were always a picture of bliss in my heart, a picture of bliss. So her experience with Sri Ramakrishna was one of all joy and love and care. And yet, when he went back to Dakshineshwar, he plunged again into his spiritual practices, into his divine madness. And the villagers gradually began to speak of her as the poor Sarada who's married to that madman. And it was very painful. It's amazing how cruel people can be in these kind of situations. So she had that challenge, and gradually she realized she's got to go see him. If he's mad, then she should go and serve him and help him. And so she was even too shy to tell her father that she wants to go serve her husband. Too shy to tell her own father. That's how meek she was. So she told a friend, I shall go to Dakshineshwar to see him. And the friend told her father about it. And of course the ruse was that the women were going on a pilgrimage to Gangasagar to take a bath in the Ganga, so she proposed to go with them. But her father said that no, he'll also accompany her. So the father joined the party and they went on foot. And Sarada was not used to these kind of long journeys, and on the journey she fell ill. And they had to separate from the party and engage a wayside inn where Mother Sarada was lying with high fever, practically delirious, and of course father was also very worried. And she had some kind of dreamlike vision. A beautiful young woman entered the room, her complexion as black can be, and with long hair and jewels, and came and started stroking Sarada's body. And with that touch, she felt her fever cooled and peace in her heart, and like all her worries about trying to go to Dakshineshwar but falling ill and being left behind and all those things, and Dad is here and we're stuck in the roadside inn and all that just settled down, and she felt completely calm and started feeling normal. And so she asked that lady, where do you come from? And she answered, from Dakshineshwar. And Sarada, indeed, I wanted to go to Dakshineshwar myself, see him there, and serve him. Perhaps ill luck will prevent my desires being fulfilled. Don't say that, she said, don't say that. You will surely go to Dakshineshwar. You will get well and see him. It is for your sake that I am keeping him there. Sarada said, is that true? Who are you? Any relation of ours? I am your sister. Is that so? Perhaps that is why you have come. And then she disappeared. So our natural interpretation is that Mother Kali, Bhavatarini of Dakshineshwar, came to make the arrangements. And she says, I've kept him there for you. So there's not really much we can say about it except to say in wonder this is something that is beyond our rational minds to understand. And yet, Holy Mother herself has relayed this incident, so we have to accept that she experienced it because she was dedicated to truth. and wouldn't make something up. When they reached Dakshineshwar, all her doubts about Sri Ramakrishna's mental state immediately vanished. He was as before, so loving and caring, and so she came to Dakshineshwar, and then off and on she stayed with Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar until the end of his life. Dakshineshwar, and afterwards at Shampukur and Kashipur to the end of his life. Off and on going back to Jairambati sometimes and staying with him. But for a number of years she served him directly, cooked for him every day. But it was not an ordinary marriage. There was no connection on the physical plane. Their marriage was not consummated on the physical plane. They did not need that physical union because they were established in transcendental union. They were united on a higher plane, making it really unnecessary on the physical plane. And that first happened, you can say that was really reflected in this very famous event when Sri Ramakrishna worshipped his wife, Ma Sarada, as the Divine Mother of the universe. And this is known as the Shodashi Puja, which is the worship of the girl 16 years old, the Divine Mother envisioned as a 16-year-old young maiden. And Holy Mother might have been 18 at the time, actually, but I'm going to move this up just a little. You guys were sinking. How did it happen? It was the night of the Phalaharini Kali Puja, one of the major pujas of Kali, which is a nighttime puja. All night long the mother is worshipped in the Kali temple. Now Sri Ramakrishna made arrangements for puja also in his own room with the ingredients of worship, new cloth, and all the flowers, etc., etc. And but no image of the deity, only a wooden seat. Wooden seat means, I don't know if you've seen these, that actual seat is at Beramat, and I've seen it. It's a wooden asana, you can say. It's just a rectangle made of wood with maybe 4 little legs on it, so it's not flat on the ground, but just raised just a little. And I think there's a little ridge carved around the edge of it, as I recall. But it's a very simple wooden asana. And these were the kind of seats that people would use to take their meals and that kind of thing. That's something that I remember still now in India. India is very hard, just in terms of physical surfaces. Like the floors are almost always concrete or stone, or in the temples maybe marble. And the chairs, you see every chair in this hall has a nice cushion on it. In India the chairs don't have cushions, they're hard, and they're wood. But then even when we have the wood chairs here, they're carved so that they're a little bit rounded, so your backside sort of cradled in it. No, just flat, hard, so everything hard. So like that, these seats, it was considered maybe even a little bit of a luxury to have a seat like this, but it's just hard wood. It's a little softer than concrete, but not much. So that's a little bit of an aside, sorry about that. So just this seat. And then the time for the worship came up, and of course everybody went to the temple. The worship, they needed all hands on deck for this complex worship ritual, and so Sri Ramakrishna was alone in his room, and he called Holy Mother. He called Ma Sarada to his room to witness the worship he was going to do. And so he did all the preliminary things of the worship, and then he asked her to sit on the seat. We can imagine how would she be willing to do that? She must have been already in some kind of altered state of consciousness. Otherwise she was so bashful that she wouldn't have dreamed of sitting there. But she took the seat, and Sri Ramakrishna invoked in her the Divine Mother of the universe and worshipped her with all the 16 items, including dressing her, in taking off her sari and dressing her in a new sari. How did Mother even permit that? So this is addressed in this quote, which I'll read. Lakshmi Devi, Sri Ramakrishna's niece, reported that Holy Mother told her, first he painted my feet with alta, that's that red dye that we see adorning the feet of the Indian women, at least Bengali women, at least. Do other people in other parts of India also use the alta?
We use mehendi.
So it's actually beautiful, and the city women don't do it much, but in the villages you'll see a lot of the young women, they have their feet painted, they'll dip their feet in alta, and so there's a red border around the bottom of the feet. It's beautiful. So first he painted my feet with alta and put vermilion on my forehead. Then he clad me in a new cloth. He also fed me with sweets and beetle roll. Lakshmi Devi asked her, smiling, "You are so shy, my dear. How did he put the cloth on you?" Mother replied, "I was in an altogether different state of semi-absorption then." Someone else asked her, "Mother, did you not feel any hesitation or shyness when the Master offered flowers at your feet and fed you with sweets with his own hands?" The mother told him, "No, I saw him no doubt doing all this, but I had no inclination to utter a word even." So Swami Sardananda describes that what happened in the course of the worship, that after performing all the nyasas, means placing the mantras on the mother's body and all of that, he worshipped her with the 16 articles as the Devi herself. The Holy Mother lost normal consciousness and went into samadhi. The Master too, uttering mantras in the semi-conscious state, entered into complete samadhi. The worshipper in samadhi became perfectly identified and united with the Devi in samadhi. So he concludes by saying, the Master's sadhana reached its culmination with the worship of the ruler of the universe, the Divine Mother, in the body of a woman, the embodiment of spiritual knowledge itself. And after this, Sri Ramakrishna offered his rosary, we say his japamala, the beads that he used for repeating the divine name, for repeating his mantra. He offered that at Mother's feet and symbolically offered all the fruits of his spiritual practices at Mother's feet. So it's really unique in the spiritual history of the world that a world teacher should worship his wife like this. And really we see now the indications of Mother as Devi, Mother as Goddess, which was established, as it were, by Sri Ramakrishna through the Shodashi Puja. Afterwards, how did Sri Ramakrishna look on Ma Sarada? How did he look on her? She asked him, a couple of times she asked him. Once she was massaging his feet, and she asked him, "How do you look on me?" The mother who is the deity in the temple, means Ma Kali in the temple. The mother who gave birth to me and now resides in the Nahabat, that means Chandramani Devi, Sri Ramakrishna's earthly mother, who was staying in the Nahabat. Even she is now massaging my feet. So, Divine Mother Kali and the mother of this body and you, Ma Sarada, are one universal mother. Another time, Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on his cot, and Sarada Ma was sweeping the floor, and suddenly asked him, "Who am I to you?" Sri Ramakrishna, without any hesitation, replied, "You are my blissful mother, Anandamayi. You are my blissful mother." And to others he had said, "She is Sarada Saraswati. She has come to impart knowledge. She has descended by covering up her beauty this time, lest unregenerate people should come to grief by looking at her with impure eyes. She is full of wisdom. Is she of the common run? She is my Shakti." So, I don't know, she looks beautiful to me, but maybe she's not, even Sri Ramakrishna in the beginning of his sadhana, it said his body used to glow, it used to shine, and people couldn't stop staring at him. And then he asked the Divine Mother, Mother, go within, don't let there be external manifestation. And so then he lost that kind of luster that was like a magnet to eyes, so that he wouldn't be so much the center of attraction of all eyes, even the worldly people. So like that, Mother also kept herself very hidden. She warned Hridoy. Hridoy was Sri Ramakrishna's nephew who served him quite a lot. And Hridoy could be very rough. He was very rough with Ramakrishna, and he was also rough with Ma Sarada. And once Sri Ramakrishna warned him, look here, you may insult me, but don't hurt her feelings. If he who dwells in this, meaning himself, hisses, you may somehow get by. But if he who dwells in her hisses, no one, not even Brahma, Vishnu or Shiva, will be able to protect you. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna looked on Ma Sarada. And yet we can ask then, how did Ma Sarada look on Ramakrishna? Once Hridoy asked Sarada Ma, banteringly, Aunt, don't you call my uncle your father? The impromptu answer came from her lips. Why do you speak of him as father only? He is mother, father, friend, relative, acquaintance, my nearest and dearest, and everything. So this is when Sri Ramakrishna was still alive. But then there's the Mahasamadhi. Sri Ramakrishna was taken to Kashipur, and on August 16, 1886, he left his body and broke the hearts of all his disciples and of the Holy Mother who were left behind. And the Holy Mother had been cooking for him and serving him, though completely hidden from the others. But when he left the body, right then and there, hearing about it, she came into the room. Though the other disciples were there, she actually came into the room, broke down weeping, and said, O Mother, O Ma Kali, what have I done that you have departed, leaving me alone in the world? So this is fascinating, that Sri Ramakrishna looked on Ma Sarada as Ma Kali. And here, what welled forth from Ma Sarada's lips when Sri Ramakrishna left the world was, Ma Kali, why have you left me? So she apparently also looked on Ramakrishna as Ma Kali. And then much later, maybe this is much later, when she was would worship Sri Ramakrishna every day and had this extremely intimate relationship with him, inviting him to take his meals, taking him for travel, putting him to bed at night, waking him up in the morning. And someone asked him, how do you look on Sri Ramakrishna? And she said, as my child. So she had these different ways of looking. On the one hand, he's all in all, everything, mother, father, acquaintance, my nearest and dearest, everything. On the other hand, my child, and on the other hand, as Divine Mother herself. Well, how did her motherhood, this aspect of mother, which is what I think draws us to her first, is her assurance that we have a mother and that she is our mother. Sri Ramakrishna was quite strict with his disciples, and so much so that he stipulated how much they could eat. And when they were staying with him, he would keep a watch over. They shouldn't eat too much because they should be meditating all night. And if you eat too much for supper, you'll sleep rather than meditating. And he wanted them to be like him, up all night meditating. Though of course no one could be like him. And he even said, just do a 16th of what I have done, that's enough. Even that's a lot. So he actually, Rakhal was allowed to have 6 chapatis. Latu was allowed 5, with Baburam only 4. So you know all these stories, but they're great stories.
That's good.
So one night after supper, Holy Mother would cook for them, of course, and Sri Ramakrishna asked Balaram, how many chapatis did you have? And Balaram, he couldn't lie, he said, I had 6 chapatis. Sri Ramakrishna was annoyed. He called Holy Mother, what is this? You're ruining their spiritual life. I told you only 4 chapatis about, we gave him 6 chapatis. But Mother fired back. She's not going to take it from Sri Ramakrishna. She says, why do you get upset just because he had 2 more chapatis? I shall look to their future. Don't you take them to task for this matter of eating. And so Sri Ramakrishna accepted this. He accepted the reply, and maybe he understood that, it seems that he understood she's stepping into her role as spiritual mother, not only as physical mother, but as spiritual mother, because she guaranteed, I will see to their future. So if she is Divine Mother, then her assurance, as Sri Ramakrishna saw her, then her assurance that she will look after their future, that settled it for him. So here, motherhood triumphed over fatherhood. And that's why we oftentimes we feel like we approach mother sooner than they approach father. Though Sri Ramakrishna also, as we saw yesterday, he's extremely compassionate and gracious, and he was so, his whole aim was to help people to awaken to the divinity within, to help people find their life's fulfillment in the realization of God. Only he knew that it's a tough road, and it requires discipline and yearning and struggle. Whereas Mother is ready to do it all for us. So the relation between Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna after his Mahasamadhi is also very interesting, because it continued. And Holy Mother herself said that she wouldn't have been able to continue living if she hadn't had continual contact with him and reassurance from him. So though he was no longer in the body, clearly in the physical body, he was clearly still in some kind of subtle body in which he was in constant communion and even gave Holy Mother guidance. For instance, the matter of her bracelets. Every Hindu widow, when, at least in those days, I don't know, I hope things are getting a little bit easier today.
No.
They're not getting easier.
No, not now.
Oh.
The people know, yeah.
Yeah, in those days it was really tough. Really, the Hindu widow, no matter how young she is, old she is or young she is, when her husband dies, she's supposed to live like a nun. She's supposed to cut her hair and take off all her jewelry. She's not allowed to wear the little marks of vermilion on her forehead, nothing. And she's supposed to eat a very strict vegetarian diet. So that was the tradition. So Holy Mother, when the time afterwards, she started removing those bangles, because she's supposed to remove them. And Sri Ramakrishna appeared to her right then and there and said, what are you doing? Am I dead, that you are acting like a widow? I have just moved from one room to another. So this is why Holy Mother didn't remove the bangles, and she faced a lot of criticism and even harassment from the villagers because she didn't remove her bangles, and she didn't wear a completely plain white sari. She would wear a sari generally with a thin red border, not the thick red borders you see, but the thin red border. You can see the little bit of a border on the sari. You see how there's a little colored border? A widow is supposed to wear a perfectly plain white sari in those days. So and then devotees would give her sometimes colored saris, and she would wear them for a few days also. So we see that she didn't observe those. The only thing she observed was that she was vegetarian. She gave up eating fish after that. But so she relates. I used to put on a sari with thin red borders and wear gold bangles on my wrist, which made me afraid of people's criticism. I was then at Kamarpukur, her in-laws' place. Sri Ramakrishna started appearing often before me. then I gradually got rid of that fear. So it was actually by that constant communion with Sri Ramakrishna that she was able to live and able to get over her bashfulness to a certain extent, at least as far as these kind of things like wearing bangles and all of that. And she did have a year of intense spiritual disciplines in Vrindavan, mostly in Vrindavan. She went with a small circle of attendants. And it was there that she began having she did have some deep samadhis and ecstasies, and that lifted that grief of hers to a certain extent. And then, as we know, in order to keep her mind in this world, Sri Ramakrishna gave her Aradhu, her niece, her favorite brother's daughter, whose mother went mad with grief at the death of her brother. And so Holy Mother brought up the girl as her own daughter, and that tied her mind down to our plane so that she could serve all of Sri Ramakrishna's children and all of us. So I thought I'd just read a few little glimpses of conversations that Mother had with different disciples, as related by the disciples. Swami Arupananda, who's one of the recorders of the reminiscences in the Gospel of Holy Mother, had this to say. This is shortly after he had come to Jairambati. He came again in the afternoon to see Mother in her little house, her little mud house. Those of you who have been to Jairambati know that at first she lived there was a little complex of mud houses. They call them mud huts. Actually, it sounds horrible, but mud houses are very nice. You'll be surprised how clean they are. They're kept clean by being wiped down every day. And it's true, they're made of mud with straw mixed in and packed together, and it dries out and it becomes very hard. And in the very hot weather of Bengal, they're very cool inside. They stay cool, particularly if they have a nice thick roof of thatch, which is the straw from rice, the rice harvest. Once the rice is harvested, they cut all the straw and make a beautiful thatched roof, put that on the roof, and that keeps it dry inside, and it stays cool, it's quiet, it's very protected. These walls are really thick, so there's small windows. Inside there might be a few little niches in the walls, carved out, little area with maybe one or two shelves. Very few possessions. Something that struck me even when I first visited India in 1996, how few the possessions were that people had compared to what we have here. It's very simple, just a few items of clothing. We have, even in this little ashram, we probably have 10 different pots and pans. If they have one or two, that's enough. So we came to find Mother sitting on the porch of the veranda of the house. So Swami Rupananda came and found the Mother kneading dough for chapatis. You know, if you make those chapatis, first you have to knead the dough, then you have to make them into balls, and you let them sit for a couple of hours, and then you roll them out and make chapatis. So she was sitting in the southwest corner of the veranda of her house with her legs stretched out in front of her. Beside her stood the small earthen stove where the luchis, curries, and so forth for the evening meal were cooked. It would have been basically a little hole in the ground with some bricks around it, or earth, and you put the wood in there and put the pot right on top. So it's a little stove like that.
I have seen those days.
So seeing me, Mother asked me, "What do you want?" And Rupananda says, "I want to talk with you." Mother, "What about? Have a seat." Saying this, she gave me an asana, which means a little cloth seat to sit on, or straw. We don't know what it was made of. The disciple asked, "Mother, everyone says Thakur is Purna Brahma Sanatan, the eternal and perfect Brahman. What do you say?" Mother, "Yes, he is my Purna Brahma Sanatan." Since she said my, I said, "To every woman, her husband is Purna Brahma Sanatan. I'm not asking the question in that sense." Mother: Yes, he is the eternal and perfect Brahman, looking on him as my husband, and also otherwise. Then I thought that if he was Purna Brahma, then Mother must be Jagadamba, the mother of the universe herself. Like Sita Ram, Radha Krishna, no difference between them. I had also come to see Mother cherishing this faith. I asked her, then, why do I see you rolling rotis like an ordinary woman? What is all this? Is it Maya or what? And Mother replied, Maya indeed. Otherwise, why should I be in this condition? I would be Lakshmi, staying beside Narayana in Vaikuntha. But God loves the Nara Leela, loves to sport as a human being. Sri Krishna was born the son of a cowherd. Rama was Dasharatha's son. So it's an interesting, very interesting exchange. And these answers are given so casually. My mother says, yes, otherwise I would be Lakshmi sitting in Vaikuntha with next to Narayana. What does it mean? How can she say that? So it's difficult to understand how, and yet she hints that, see, we come for this, because this play as a human being, we love it. Though it gives so much difficulty. But we see that she's ready to make these kinds of revelations only to very few people, like this Arupananda, who already had faith. He was cherishing this idea in his heart that Mother is actually Divine Mother. So she revealed that yes, that your understanding is correct. There's another incident. Shibu, her nephew, Shivaram, who was known as Shibu, was just a boy at that time and was going to Jairambati from Kamarpukur. They were going together, just the two of them, and Shibu was helping her with a bundle, carrying a bundle. And as they neared Jairambati, he thought of something and stopped. The mother was surprised and asked him to follow. Shibu: I shall only move if you tell me something. The young boy, he's asking, I shall only move if you tell me something. What? Asked Mother, what? Will you tell me who you are? Who else am I? I'm your aunt. Come on, let's go. Oh, you can go yourself. You have come near your home. I won't go. Don't be silly, said Mother. Who do you think I am? I am a human being, your aunt. Very good. Then, why don't you go? Seeing Shibu still standing there, the mother said, people say I am Kali. Shibu: are you really Kali? Is it true? Yes. Then Shibu was pleased. He said, okay, let's go. So, particularly to family members, she was very reluctant to reveal herself, because what can they understand? Yet clearly Shibu was of a different caliber, and he understood something of Mother. Alright, maybe we have one more. This is one of my favorites. There was a devotee known only by the name Vaikuntha, and Mother was staying at Kamarpukur for a few days, and he came to visit Kamarpukur and spend some time with Holy Mother. And he was going to leave, so the next day, he said, after noon prasad, I went inside the compound to take leave of the Holy Mother. I found her sitting on the veranda, as she is so often seen, sitting on the veranda doing something. Here she's preparing betel leaves. She asked me, have you made pranams to Raghuvir? I said, no, Mother. Now Raghuvir is the family deity of Sri Ramakrishna's family, and since they were in Kamarpukur, there's a small temple there dedicated to Raghuvir, Sitala, and Rameshwar, Shiva, Rameshwar Shiva, which the Rameshwar his father had brought from Rameshwaram, actually, from South India when he went on that pilgrimage. So this small temple is there. So he said, whoever comes here should offer something there. offer some pranami. That means offer a little money, offer 1 or 2 coins, in other words. When you make pranam to Raghuvir, if you do not have money, take some from me. No, mother, I have money. I went to the temple of Raghuvir to offer my pranams. On my return, I saluted the Holy Mother to take leave of her. She suddenly exclaimed, Vaikuntha, call on me. Vaikuntha, call on me. And interesting, the language, Amai Dakish, means she used the very close Tui form of address, which is used for very intimate companions and children. Vaikuntha, call on me. But the very next moment, she added, call on Thakur, Thakur ke deko. Calling on Thakur, you will attain everything. Sri Ramakrishna's niece, Lakshmi Devi, was there. She was standing nearby and she intervened. She said, no, mother, what is this? This is quite improper. What will your children do if you confuse them in this way? What did I do? Said mother. Lakshmi Devi, mother, just a moment ago you told Vaikuntha, call on me. And now you are saying, call on Thakur. Mother, when one calls on Thakur, everything is achieved. Lakshmi Devi, mother, it is not proper for you to bewilder your children. Then she turned to me, that is Vaikuntha, and said emphatically, see here, Vaikuntha, today for the first time I have heard the mother saying, call on me. You must not miss this point. Who else is Thakur? You call on the mother alone. Very fortunate are you that the mother herself told you so. You call on mother alone. Then she said to the mother, well, mother, this is explained, I believe. And the mother, through her silence, lent her support indirectly to Lakshmi Devi's words. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell his disciples, think on me. It'll be enough if you think of this place, means himself. So he did instruct, he never taught any of his disciples to worship him, which we do. Swami Vivekananda points out that he only instructed some of his disciples to meditate on him, on himself. But the Holy Mother has given a little additional by asking Vaikuntha to call on her. So it's a beautiful teaching, and I think now her children all over the world are going on, calling on her, and also feeling her compassionate response. There's so many stories. I think we're run out of time to keep telling the stories, but of her infinite patience, her compassion, how she manifested in so many different ways as mother, as guru, and as Devi. So I think we'll close here. And
Swami, tell them the story about mother. Funny, she lost herself hissing, the tap hissing in Calcutta.
oh,
Yeah, tell that. You don't like, you don't like that.
you know, when she came to Calcutta for the first time, they had running water. In the village, there was just a well, or not even a well, just a pond, and you take water from the pond and you use that for cooking and drinking and everything. And so she was taught to, you have to turn the faucet and the water comes out. But sometimes when you turn on the faucet, especially in those days, there would be some air in the pipes. So when you turn on the faucet and the faucet would hiss for a bit before the water comes. You hear this, and then the water starts going. And so one day she turned on the faucet, and this hissing sound came, and she became terrified because she thought there's a snake in the faucet, in the pipes. So she got, oh, there's a snake, and then it turned out that no, it's just the air rushing out of the pipe.
She used to tell people herself and laugh about it.
Right. Good point. She could just laugh at herself, which is a great art also. Well, thank you for listening while I got a chance to read some of the interesting stories about Holy Mother and the Ramakrishna. And any questions or comments?
You're good storyteller though. It's very good. Thank you.
Let us seek Mother's blessings. Let us seek her blessings that we may become like her. She who could not see any faults. We should probably just remind ourselves of Mother's last teaching to us. When she was on her deathbed, just a few days, 5 days before she left this world in Mahasamadhi, one devotee came to her, a lady devotee, known as Annapurna's mother, and she came to the doorway of Mother's room. No one was allowed to enter the room, but Mother saw her standing at the doorway and beckoned to her, "You come inside." And so she came near Mother and she bowed down, and she was, of course, broken-hearted knowing that Mother is dying. She said, "Mother, what will happen to us hereafter?" And Mother consoled her in a very quiet voice, almost inaudible voice. She said, "Why do you fear? You have seen the Master." Then she paused, and then she said, "But I tell you one thing. If you want peace of mind, do not find fault with others. If you want peace of mind, do not find fault with others. Rather see your own faults. Your own faults. See your own faults. Learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. This whole world is your own." So may we imbibe this teaching of Mother to feel that the whole world is our own, that we can go anywhere, because every person is our own person, our own relative, our own near and dear relative, that there is no them here, only us, and that we don't have to see the faults of others, but rather attain the true peace of mind, which comes from seeing the merits in others, and seeing the divine in others, and seeing the divine in ourselves. Om Sarvastaratu Durgani Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu Sarvasad-buddhimapnotu Sarvasarvatranandatu Durjana Sajjano Bhuyat Sajjana Shantimapnuyat Shanto Muccheta Bandhebhyo Muktaschanya Vimochaye. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all be freed from dangers. May all realize what is good. May all be actuated by noble thoughts. May all rejoice everywhere. May the wicked become virtuous. May the virtuous attain tranquility. May the tranquil be free from bonds. May the freed make others free. Om peace, peace, peace. There's some prasad. There's some fruit
So
prasad.
they have brought food for so many people. So the weather's good, maybe we don't have to box now. So we can sit out and eat and something.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good.
Thanks also to those who joined us online.
Yeah.
We
See you
said
next
that,
time.
Yeah, so you know, खाना खा के
नहीं
जाना?
नहीं नहीं
नहीं
मैं खाना में लेके जाऊंगा फिर